What we want to look at today, um, in the middle of the summer, is working. I know it's holiday time, but we want to just consider what the impact is for expats from the UK living and working abroad in the EU. Not just UK expats in the EU, but for people around the world. The EU is a bloc which limits the entry-exit permits. There's a lot of stuff going on with this at the moment, and it's the same is true in the UK as well. Um, you don't automatically have a right to live in another country. You don't automatically have a right to get a tax number in another country. You don't automatically have a right to work in another country. Now, the rules are slightly different for buying property, for owning companies, for investing, or for having a holiday home. What I'm talking about here is if you want to be working abroad, if you want to be a nomad as far as your work is concerned. Now, the fancy term, the modern term is digital nomad, just working from home. How I like to refer to it is that you can work around the corner if you're working remotely, but you can also work across border if you want. So, but then there is a complication as far as employers are concerned. So if the employer has consented for you to work remotely, will he allow you to work in another country, in another jurisdiction? And if that is the case, what are the complications and what are the issues that you've got to consider then? That's what I want to look at today, specifically for when you're living and working abroad and what type of contract you want to be on. Slightly different rules for North America, USA, Europe, UK, other third countries, but I'm going to specifically focus in on EU and UK at the moment. But these same rules apply to anybody from any third country outside the EU, whether it's the UK or whether it's Middle East, Asia, or America. The point to bear in mind is that the UK now, Brexit is finished. Brexit, the 5-year post-Brexit period ended in June 26. So now UK citizens are considered to be third country national as far as the EU is concerned. You don't automatically have a right to live and work in the EU if you're British. Now, if you had EU citizenship, a residency permit before Brexit, as a biometric ID card for the EU, then you have EU citizens' rights, and that includes freedom of movement and relocation overseas. So it could be that you do, in fact, have a right to live and work in the EU if you're British, if you've got pre-Brexit a biometric ID card. It's too late to get a new one now, or is it? End of August is the deadline, so if you haven't got one now, contact us and get that sorted out. So if you've got the old pink slip or yellow slip from an EU country, from Cyprus, and you haven't got a biometric card, you've got until the end of August 26 to get that issued to you. That will retain any pre-Brexit citizens' rights that you've got and potentially give you a platform to move forward. So that's the first consideration. If you've got EU citizenship, you can then work in an EU country and in Cyprus. If not, a British person hasn't got a right to work in the EU or the EU. Now, it could be that you've got a specialist skill set that allows you to work in a specific job. It could be that you could apply for a high earning, a golden visa approach. So some countries like Cyprus offer high earners, people earning over 55,000 a year, a digital nomad visa that allows them to live and work in Cyprus as a tax resident for that high earning salary. But again, there's conditions that come with it, and this is what we want to look at today. If you are living and working abroad in Cyprus as a self-employed person, there's some other very interesting points to consider. Um, Dividend tax is 0%, no tax on interest. If you've got high earnings and you're coming into work in Cyprus for the first time, you can get up to 50% deduction on income tax. That means you're paying a maximum 17.5%. If you incorporate a business in Cyprus, then you can pay a maximum 15% corporation tax, the minimum allowed under the OECD Pillar 2 rules enforced around the world. So you've got a tax compliant jurisdiction to be living and working in, basing your business in as a sole trader or a company. However, if you're a sole trader in Cyprus, you have to or an employee, you have to consider social insurance. The EU has got a social insurance system set up, which is common among all countries. The UK, it has got its own social insurance system, but it's a member of a social insurance agreement with the EU. There are other countries that the UK cooperate with, like Turkey, Bahamas, Bermuda, and USA that it cooperates with on social insurance agreements, and therefore you've got reciprocal arrangements that can be made. And this gives rise to a number of different ways that you can tax resident to be living and working abroad. Okay, so we're talking about in this show, we're talking about people that are working abroad. So if somebody comes to Cyprus and works as a freelancer or contractor, Cyprus will want you to be on social insurance that is based upon a self-employed basis. The interesting thing there, from a UK perspective, is that social insurance is a flat rate tax in Cyprus. So in the UK, you can earn 12,500 income before being income taxed, but also before paying national insurance. But in Cyprus, social insurance applies straight away. So if you're a sole trader, you've got over 20% flat rate social insurance on your income, up to an upper limit. There's no lower limit though, you pay it on everything up to the upper limit. If you've an employee, the social insurance rate for the employee in Cyprus is 28%. So it's substantially higher than the UK, and for sort of similar benefits. However, if you're working abroad, if you're working anywhere, you need to be paying national insurance. So that is the key. You can be tax resident in Cyprus and pay your social insurance in another country, but you then have to transfer your benefits across. And how do you do that? There's a number of different ways. So if you're working for a UK employer as a contractor and you want to digitally remote work in Cyprus, you can do it as an employee, and you can have an arrangement where you through a company like Proact, secure a no tax regime in the UK, and you continue to pay national insurance in the UK on that basis, either through your employment or as a sole trader. If you if the employer wants a different approach, they can use some different approaches. Now, bigger companies might have a branch in that country which allows them to be an employer. If not, they can create or employ an employer of record. Now, that is an expense for the company. So if the company is prepared to do that, the employer of record can then take your contract of employment in the UK and register the employment in Cyprus for you and pay the social insurance and payroll from Cyprus. So that will be a way for somebody to be working remotely for the UK company, not to involve the UK company in the complications of having an overseas employee on the books by just subcontracting the employer of record work to the employee overseas. That does cost a monthly fee, but it costs less than the employer necessarily managing the whole process. So there is a cost there, but it could be one that's worth bearing in mind. If you're working as a freelance or contractor and you register social insurance, the flat rate social insurance then is going to be 20%. Now, the added twist with Cyprus is that depending upon your profession, you're deemed to be earning a certain amount of salary. So you don't pay social insurance at 20% in Cyprus on what you actually earn. You pay it on what your profession should be earning, and that can be a quite substantial figure. You know, at least €350 a week is your deemed income. If you're a new business, you get concessions. If you've got low earnings, you get low earnings, but you can't pay social insurance on less than the minimum pay rates in Cyprus. So minimum salary officially, the official minimum salary rate in Cyprus is €1,088. So that's the minimum social insurance you're going to be paying. 1,088 a month means that the sole trader is going to pay at least €200 social insurance each month. Now, if you're working as a contractor, if you're creating your own personal service company and it's a UK company, if you can manage the income tax or the corporation tax amount, you could actually end up paying less tax in a different way. That needs organisation, it needs tax planning, and a review. So what we're saying to our clients here is, if you're already a sole trader in Cyprus, let's review your contract. Let's see how much social insurance you pay. Are you paying the right amount? Could you get a reduction? Is that cost effective? Should you be trading from a Cyprus company, or should you be being employed by the UK company and paying your social insurance like that, either as a personal service company in the UK or as your employer in the UK? So get an employer of record arrangement set up. There's lots of different ways to pay the minimum amount of tax, not just income tax, not just dividend taxes, which are very low in Cyprus, but also not to pay more social insurance than you need to. You have to pay that, but it is transferable between the UK and the EU and any other third-party jurisdiction that the UK or the EU have got the social insurance agreement with. So that includes British people in Turkey, for example, or Philippines, or other places around the world. Lots to discuss, lots to review. We're going to review that with our clients in this summer quarter. If you are concerned about the amount of social insurance or state cover or the legitimacy of your tax and business arrangements in Cyprus or in the EU or the UK, contact us for more information and guidance on how to be tax registered and pay the right amount of tax, social insurance to protect you and your family for welfare benefits, including healthcare. Contact us at propartnership.com. Thanks a lot for listening, and we'll see you next time.
To enjoying life abroad
and letting ProAct handle the details.